So we will begin the meeting. It is now 5:33, and I will go to the agenda. We'll go through the agenda, and then we'll actually get into the actual topic. So the call to order, we'll do a roll call. Guests and presenters, we have Chief Schroeder of the Lake Mills Police Department here, and Wendy Catalani-Davies from the Joint Rock Lake Commission. We'll have Parks Board meeting minutes review and approval, hopefully a Parks and Forestry Director's report, and other public comments, including emails, and then review, discuss, and rank the mill pond recommendations, being the fishing piers, boardwalk, launch, trailer parking, motorless watercraft launch, short or long-term kayak storage, kayak rentals, and educational signage. And then we will talk about the mill pond recreational improvement estimate costs, and then we will prepare a city council update or recommendation on the next steps for fulfilling the city council resolution. Then we go to announcements, recommendations for future agendas, and then adjournment. So after that overview, let's go to the roll call. Anita, would you go first, please?
Anita Martin here.
Mike Niesman here.
Tim Sprecher present.
Mary Schmager here.
All right, thank you. So guests and presenters, and we'll go in order. So Chief Steve Schroeder, would you please make your presentation?
Absolutely, on the hot seat right away. Good evening. Director Schreiner asked me to come and just make a brief report to you about our Community Service Officer program, excuse me, and how we've been implementing them, particularly at Sandy Beach Park and Bartles Beach. So I'll give you a brief background since I haven't presented to this board before. As of 2022, we had one part-time employee in the Parks Department who did kind of some minor ordinance observations down at Sandy Beach Park, kind of just keeping an eye on things on the weekend to make sure people were behaving themselves and nothing got out of line. That individual retired at the end of the summer of 2022. So Director Schreiner and I talked about how we could provide some sort of service, particularly at Sandy Beach Park, but at all of our parks during the summertime when they're busier. So I had looked at starting a community service officer program, which consists of non-sworn employees who can do some minor ordinance enforcement, but looking particularly at college-age kids who may be interested in getting into law enforcement for a career, and it's a way for them to kind of get a little bit of exposure and experience working with the police department. So we started in 2023, and we did that with about 3 community service officers. They would work generally Friday evenings and Saturdays and Sundays at Sandy Beach Park as well as Bartles Beach. And they could kind of go back and forth between the two. And they were looking for parking violations, minor ordinance violations like glass in the park, dogs in the park, or animals in the park, noise violations, things like that. So 2023, we kind of went through the summer with those 3 on staff, really focusing on weekend hours. And then in 2024, we were able to expand our budget for our CSO, or our Community Service Officer program. And we actually scheduled them every evening of the week, as well as on Saturdays and Sundays. So this year, to date, our CSOs have worked about 632 hours. Most of those hours were between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and really focusing on our parks. Some of it was also for special events like Town and Country Days and other parades and things that we have. Those enforcement activities I talked about is what they focused on, the parking and then the minor ordinance violations. Our CSOs issued just over 400 parking citations this summer, most of them at Sandy Beach. They also assisted the gate attendants by transporting proceeds from the day back to the police department so it could be stored until Monday when Eric would pick it up. So I would say, all in all, the feedback that I've gotten through Director Schreiner is positive, that we have more of a presence down at the parks, that they appreciate it. Obviously, our parks are very busy in the summer. and I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon. So we look to continue the program. Really, a goal is just to kind of deter some of that behavior, the noise violations, educate people about glass and animals in the parks, and just keep it so it's a safe and fun experience for all who want to use the parks. So that's kind of what we have done and what we look forward to continuing to do in the future. I'll expand the CSO's role a little bit, but it'll be really outside of the purview of the Parks Board. It's going to be doing some other code enforcement or other things throughout the city throughout the year. So if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Just brief, so are they still part-time and mostly summer, or are you going to have someone year-round?
So they are technically considered just regular part-time rather than. Oh, I think I turned off. They are part-time, not regular part-time, so they are on staff throughout the year. Some of them are college students, so they're really not available during the school year. But a couple of them are just local residents who have an interest in helping too, not necessarily wanting to get in. So we'll have a couple to help throughout the winter, and then we'll have to see where we're at come next spring, if we need to backfill some positions or if all of them come back.
Great idea.
Since this is a newer program, I'm curious if any of the community service officers had feedback on improvements that they would suggest we make or you make with the program.
Yeah, we haven't. So actually our 3 from the first year all left after the first year for various reasons. So one went to active duty military, one finished law school and is a lawyer, and she's busy enough as it is. And the third one, I have to think, one did come back. And the rest were all new this year. So I think overall their experience has been positive, and we've actually had a little bit of a growing interest in people wanting to join. And I had a couple I turned away this year because I said, we're kind of full staff and I don't want to limit the hours of the 5 we have by bringing on more. So 5 was kind of a really good number to keep it at.
And to the revenue of said parking, what do they, what is the charge? What is the fee for the parking?
So our parking citations are $25. That I upped when I came here in late 2022. Our parking citations were $10 citywide, but $25 specifically at Sandy Beach. And I just changed them all to $25 because $10 isn't much of a deterrent. So that revenue is all just considered revenue that's budgeted in the city budget from general citations, whether it's parking citations or traffic citations, and it goes into the city's general fund.
So from 2023, and I'm going to surmise there were parking tickets given in 2023, did we see an improvement on parking compliance in 2024?
I would say no. And the primary reason is Sandy Beach has limited I mean, there's a decent amount of parking there, but it's limited for the number of people who frequent that park. So a lot of the issues we see is just overflow parking where they're finding any place they can to park, and then they're getting cited for it.
Okay.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I do recall that there was an increase in revenue, if you will, because the more tickets were issued. We actually had I think a big uptick in the amount of money that we brought in due to the violations. Not saying there were more violations, but I think now that I know there are more people that were actually looking, it's probably a combination of we have more feet on the street and eyes looking, and there probably are still people who aren't paying attention to the signs.
There were a couple of reasons. So 2023, there was a significant increase because that was the first year we really had someone dedicated down at Sandy Beach on the weekends. 2024, obviously with more staff down there every night of the week, unless it was raining and nobody was there. But also, if you recall, last winter was just a weird winter. We didn't get the precipitation we normally get. So we had a lot more winter parking violations that were issued.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think people didn't have in their mind that they couldn't park on the street because there wasn't snow on the ground. But our ordinance just doesn't allow it overnight throughout the winter. So that's another part of that increase in the number from this year.
Interesting.
Well, the other thing that I'm hoping is that not just the revenue, but also the safety factor of not having people parked where they're not supposed to be parked, especially at the beaches and such where access to emergency services and such, I think is going to be helpful as we go forward.
It is, and if you've been down to Sandy Beach Park on the weekends at all, you notice, I mean, the boat trailer overflow parking may go all the way up Sandy Beach Road to Main Street. It's very busy in the summer, especially with the new boat launch that was opened up. So, again, I don't think the numbers are going to go down as far as visitors, so we're just trying to do what we can, to maintain safety down in that area.
Well, thank you for the presentation and thank you for supporting that. It's, I think, quite a help to Eric and the rest of us that are part of the citizenry of this area. So thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, so thank you. So we will go to item B, Joint Rock Lake Commission. Wendy, if you would please present your information.
I will. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I think it's real important that our teams, city, town, our team, of course, is both the city and the town. So we'd like to present at both councils and at the different committees. So thank you for that. And I know you asked particularly to talk about the wake boat concerns and and we were asked by the town, since the town kind of does manage the lake. And the town did ask us to, the committee, the Joint Rock Lake Committee, to give some recommendations on what to do about the wake boat or wake enhanced technology issues. And our team has been going round and round and round with it. And we really haven't come up with an answer yet, but we have done a lot of studying as to what are the concerns with the wake enhanced technology. And so we will be presenting to the town, not at their meeting tomorrow in November, but probably either in December if they have a December meeting or in January. But, excuse me, my printer printed so light I can't read, so I guess I'm running out of ink here. But we talked a lot about what's the concern, and the concern is the erosion that the boats do to the shoreline, because they have such a large wake, and if they're too close to the shoreline, they can damage the shoreline. There's also concerns, and I'm making this pretty simple, there's a lot more technology to it, and that's another issue what I'll talk about in a minute. The other thing is the way they make their wake is they weight down their ballast so that they can make the wake, and to do that they have all this water in there, and they can't or don't always drain all that water out of there when they take their boat out of the lake. So if they go to another lake, they have some water left in there, so there could be some invasive species from some lake that they're bringing here, from our lake, bringing to another lake that lake might not have. So they're transferring invasive species. Now, since we've been doing this, we've had a lot of, not lots, but several public members come and speak at our meetings, and they said, that's not so. You can really drain that all the way down if you want to. You just have to do it. So, like I said, there's a lot of studies by the industry, and those are valid studies from what I understand. There's scientific studies that industry has done, and those of you in business have known, if you're in an industry, they do scientific studies, and then the scientists do scientific studies. So there's a lot of information that you have to digest and say, what's right? I'm in the medical field, I'm an x-ray tech, and so I know that technology changes hour to hour to hour, and so it's hard, it's really hard, and this is technology, so it's really hard. So I said erosion and the shoreline, and then the other thing is the boats, push down so hard with that wake that they scour the bottom of the lake, okay? And scouring the bottom of the lake really means they churn up all of the vegetation that's down there, and then it can take years for that vegetation to grow back. And the vegetation that grows back is not, it's just like when you take a tree down out in the forest, you take trees down, what grows back fastest is not the most desirable things that grow back. So the same thing in the bottom of the lake. The stuff that grows back fastest is not the most desirable vegetation that you want. It's not necessarily what the fish want to spawn in. And that doesn't grow back very fast. So those are the three major concerns. with the wake boats. There's a lot of recommendations out there. Our group has been working and studying with the RLIA, the Rock Lake Improvement Association, who has also been doing a lot of research and sharing it with us. And a lot of public education needs to be done. And again, there's recommendations to say how far away from the shore should you be with your wake boat. I think what's kind of been going out there, and Mike, you can help me with this too, but I think they're saying 400 feet from shore is kind of what most people are saying to keep your wake boat. And most of the people that have come to our meetings say, we don't really want to be any closer to that anyhow, because our wake boat doesn't work too good if we're too close to shore. So that's kind of what people are saying. Now, we haven't recommended any of that yet, but that's what people are saying. And they want to be in 30 feet of water or more, because our wake boat doesn't work unless it's in that deep of water or more. And so those are kinds of things that people are looking at. And like I said, right now, we haven't come up with any recommendations, but things that we are looking at right now is, let's educate people. Maybe if you have a rule that's a standard, if you go into a park, say Sandy Beach, and the sign there says, no dogs, no glass, and it says, you can only have blue blankets and whatever, you're probably going to say, okay, that's what my rule is, so that's what I'm going to do from now on. It doesn't say I'm going to necessarily be fined if I don't have a blue blanket, but you're going to remember those rules and try and follow them. Most people try to follow the rules. So maybe we would educate people on what the rules should be. And so that's one thing we would recommend. Now, the state legislature also has tried to present some regulations, but most of them haven't gotten out of committee. Now, they're not going to go back to the table until, I don't know, January probably, or February. I don't know when that's going to happen. But right now, there's nothing on the table for them to vote on. Things like things that I've just said, they're not exactly what I've said, but probably something to do with how far away from shore you need to be, how deep of water you need to be in, okay? Other things government have said is the individual counties or cities like Ripley, no wake boats. No wake boat technology used on the lake. The boat can be on there, but you can't use the technology on their lake. Okay, so that's a concern for us. We got a nice lake. Where are those boats going to come? To our lake. We already got enough business on our lake, right? So do we want that? I don't know. So those are things we're looking at. And another thing is so we could have those kind of recommendations, education. There's one other one, and I'm forgetting what it is. Well, we could recommend, maybe we should wait and see a little bit. Study the situation a little more. Maybe we need to wait a year and somehow study the situation, because like I said, the technology is changing, and maybe I'm exaggerating a bit by saying hour to hour, but new technology is coming out. I'm sorry. Thank you. The technology is changing, probably every 6 months, new technology is coming out to make things better or worse, hopefully better, because I think the manufacturers of this equipment doesn't want to wreck our lakes. They want to make things better. So maybe the issues can go away. I don't know. So those are kind of the things we're looking at. Let's wait and see what else can happen. Let's see if we can tell the state to do something about it. Maybe the local government should do something about it. And maybe we should work with like the RLIA or other organizations to put together some heavy-duty education information. That's what we're looking at right now. Any questions?
The question I would have, Wendy, and as it pertains to the city of Lake Mills, particularly the Parks Board, for your comment about, would it be something that maybe we consider after you give us some more information about where it might be okay for these boats to operate by making like a map or something like that? That could be at the launch area saying these are only able to be in these colored parts of the lake where it's, 50 feet deep or 40 feet deep, whatever it would be. I wonder if that, specifically again for the Parks Board, would that be something we could recommend?
Certainly, that would be, I mean, we've talked about that theoretically, that, the RLIA has put out a pamphlet that theoretically said this would be a map that would say, here's so many feet away from shore, and I think it's even set up so you could put it into your GPS and use your phone and say, here's where it is. You would stay here. So it could potentially be put on a placard right at the launch areas. And even educational information, you could maybe get one of those little square, what are they called? The square codes that they could take a picture of, and out would come the education that says, on this lake, we recommend that you do this with your wake enhanced technology. So yeah, definitely those things could be done. And we would probably recommend it once we get to that point.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Wendy?
Well, I'm just wondering how, if you have the map, how does the person who's driving and they've got their bow up and they're trying to look in the back and they really can't see their depth finder? I mean, that's what it comes down to is, honestly, even if they want to observe it, how are they going to do it? Especially when you have things like that sensitive area over by Korth Bay that looks like it's out in the middle of the lake. And, if you scour those things, you know what's going to grow instead.
Yeah, that's yet to be figured out, I think, really. Really, because I don't own one of those boats, and I'm a pontooner. But you can also, and many people, not many, but several people have come to our meeting and say, you can have a pontoon boat with a big enough motor that can do as much damage as my wake boat. Can you? I don't know that technology, but maybe that's so too. So we just have to figure it out. A lot of people need educated on how to manage their boats on the lake too.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anita?
Wendy, did you say that the Rock Lake Improvement Association does have a pamphlet with a recommended map? I didn't really hear, I'm sorry.
I think they've shown me one. I don't know that it's one they're distributing at this point, but there's one that they've been working on. And with the county, I believe, Mike, isn't that so?
That's what they usually do, although then they always feel they have to.
I don't
They
think
have
that
to with the
it's,
county and the city, but
yeah, and I don't think that it's been anything that they're mass distributing at this point. It's just been a sample that they could potentially have this pamphlet that has the map, and you could take a picture of the QR code, that's the word I was looking for, and then it would pop into your phone and you could see it. The other problem would be, like you said, how are they going to watch it and watch this and watch their person at the same time? Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. And again, we have not come to any conclusions yet. Hopefully we will in the next meeting, next two meetings. So stay tuned. I'm happy to come to your meeting anytime you'd like.
All
And
right.
you to ours, because I think it's a good back and forth.
And what days of the month are your meetings?
We're the second Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock, usually in the community room here.
Okay.
This month, we are actually meeting on the 13th. We kind of switched things around because people couldn't be at our regular meeting.
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
the usual honorarium.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
I'll spend it all in one place.
We are moving to item number 4, which is the Parks Board minutes, a review and approval of the meeting minutes of October 14th, 2024, submitted by Michael Nisman. Are there any comments, corrections to the Parks Board minutes as submitted?
I have one comment. Like, I think these were awesome minutes. I know we've been working on the level of detail, and that has been a prior conversation, and I think these minutes were right on mark. So you did a great job on them.
Thank you.
And I would add on to that, I like the fact that you let the people know that the entirety of them are available, which is, I think, a nice feature. If no other comments or corrections, I would ask for a motion to accept the board minutes as presented.
I move to accept the Parks Board meeting minutes of October 14th as written, as presented.
Oh, second.
And Mary has a second. Do we have a vote, Mary?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Parks and Forestry Director's report from Eric. Eric, are you ready?
Yep, I am. Sorry for a few moments late. I was in another meeting prior to this. But is there anything that you would like me to touch on? Other than that, there's a couple points that I would like to highlight.
The answer, yes. I think Mary and I had a question about some math. So if you could help us out.
Yeah, if you notice, 56 and 39 don't add up to 100. There was undercounts within some of those votes on the county's website as well. I can talk about that. You're specifically referencing the referendum results for the restaurant,
No,
right?
actually, we're actually talking about one of the Mill Pond recommendations. Maybe we'll get that at the next agenda item.
Yeah, that's the next item.
Then the math.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get that. Our question had to do with one of the estimates that you had on one of the options for our Mill Pond discussion. So maybe we'll get the math on the next round of.
Yep, that is fine. So with that being said, I do want to touch on the Sandy Beach restaurant. It will be discussed at a following city council meeting. However, the referendum results were 56 voted in favor of no, of not having a expenditure for the restaurant at Sandy Beach, and 39% voting yes. I'm not sure if that's going to be at the next council meeting or the following, but that would be the next course of action, is that city council does vote on the results from that referendum. Other than that, staff have completed the erosion control at Sandy Beach. We have completed the actual shutdown of our facilities, all of our restroom facilities. That includes basically the stacking of our picnic tables and the general shutdowns within the majority of our parks. High priority has been placed on leaf vacuuming. We do have a seasonal staff member or a part-time staff member who's a phenomenal help for that, retired gentleman that is very much necessary within the department. We have had our Tree City USA application for 2024 pass regional review. It is now going to be reviewed by the Arbor Day Foundation. I expect to have the final approval for that or review by the end of this year. And let's see. We are reviewing a new athletic field use policy. It was the intent that we would have it on this meeting, but based on the Mill Pond recommendations that we would like to finish, I will have the updated athletic field use policy up for discussion at the next following Parks Board meeting. And we did have our budget approval at the city council level. Within that budget included the replacement of the Memorial Park Playground. It would be very much similar to Bartles Beach, which would include handicap access, and PIP, which is poured and placed rubber flooring. That would include pickleball perimeter fencing at Rotary Park for the next phase of expansion, or I suppose amenities at Rotary Park for the pickleball courts. That does include a new boat launch piers to replace the existing ones that were roll-in styles. And this does also include the replacement of our public pier ends, all three of which are at Hub Street, Fremont, and College Street. So I know that was some of the highlighted items for sure. They were prioritized within my submitted budget. I was very happy to see them all approved, so I think we'll have a substantial amount of recreational opportunities that we're improving for 2025. Any questions on the director's report?
I have one. I'm just wondering, I have that little sign, leave the leaves, and I'm just wondering why, maybe, can you leave some on Bartles, or at Bartles Beach on the grass there, and then either chop it up or mow it up in spring? The arguments for that, obviously.
Yep, absolutely. We do perform fertilizing on some of our lawns. The ones that are in close proximity to the lake, we do not. It's impossible to get them all, so I would say we have about 70% backing of our leaves.
Yeah.
So I would say there is still some chopped up leaves that stay at the parks. Now, is it the purpose for fertilizing, or we just didn't get to it? There's a lot of leaves that fall in the season. That's up for debate. I suppose at some point we will stop having our part-time availability, which at that point we stop backing leaves. We just try to get the majority of them.
I'm thinking especially if it's some corners, where you can leave them for the bugs and stuff. And I have to admit, sorry, Chief, my wife and I go with our pickup and take some of those mulched leaves off of off of Bartles and put them in our garden.
I've actually had that comment come across a couple times within this week, as far as when we do deposit the, I suppose, bundles of
They're
leaves
great.
outside of our hoppers. A lot of people have asked if I mind if people take them for the purposes of mulching their gardens. I say have at it. If the leaf sucker hasn't gotten to them yet, by all means, help yourself.
'Cause
As
we know
long
we
as they're
don't
not
spray.
redistributed back into the park.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mary.
I have a question. I am curious about the local Girl Scout troop 8243's educational signing interest. And first of all,
Yeah.
thanks to the Girl Scouts for wanting to, focus on something
Mm-hmm.
that's purposeful and meaningful is probably one of their projects. But I'm just curious what kind of signage and why they chose Bartles and if there's any information.
Yeah,
what they're
absolutely. I'm
thinking.
glad you
So
asked.
That's kind of intriguing.
I'm glad you asked. So Troop Leader Emily Klein reached out to me. I apologize, I do forget what the actual badge or goal that they have, what the title is, but it had some form of environmental outreach or education attached to it. They were shooting around some ideas, and some of the ideas that they did come up with is some form of educational signage to promote people using trash cans, to pick up litter, and they thought that the biggest issue was at Bartles Beach, so that's why Bartles Beach was basically picked. And they asked me if I had any issues with trash being deposited in the parks. I said Bartles Beach is notoriously bad for that. So we're working, both myself, the Girl Scout group, and Emily Klein, the trout leader, or troop leader, seeing what it is that they want to come up with. I did suggest that they present to Parks Board when they do come to the final conclusion. So at some point, we may be seeing Troop 8243 present their potential signage installation for Bartles Beach to you guys.
Thank
What it looks like now, currently not quite sure. Hasn't got to that point, but they're working on it.
That's awesome.
Any other questions for Eric regarding the report? If not, thank you, Eric. Let's move to the other public comments, including emails. Agenda item number 6. Anyone have things to report? If not, I had a citizen say they were glad that the restaurant referendum advisory was voted down. And their comment was, why doesn't the city lease the land to someone and they can build their own restaurant? And there was no more details beyond that comment. And I don't know if they're asking for a response from us tonight or what, but that was the comment. All right, if no others, let's move forward. Number 7, which is review, discuss, and rank the mill pond recommendations. So I don't know what criteria we want to use for this. It might be based on cost, it might be based on immediacy, impact, and such. And I'm going to ask Eric if you could give us some guidance on these as to whether or not we can do all, or if we should focus on low-hanging fruit, as the cliche says.
The way that I would kind of look at this, or the way that I would approach it, is what can easily be installed? What is low impact? What is low maintenance? When you're saying low-hanging fruits, I would say the easiest ones are things that can be done with current operational costs, or ones that necessitate a capital improvement request or a capital purchase request. And that kind of defines when we can pursue them. So if we could delineate that a little bit, I would say stuff like your handicap accessible piers or your kayak piers, that would necessitate a capital purchase. That would be a request by the end of June for the following year approval. Something that could potentially be pursued this year or this coming year through operational funds could be an implementation of the kayak rentals. That would go through an additional rental agreement with the actual contractor. I could see the short-term or long-term storage locations being installed fairly easily with operational costs. Educational signage would need more work onto it. How many do we want? Where do we want to put them? What's the signage involved? So I think there would be some homework involved or development for that. Boardwalk would absolutely be the most substantial amount into it. As you can see, I do not have an actual quote or estimate for that yet because very difficult for a contractor to provide that. Does it need pilings? Is it floating? What's our anchoring points to the actual shore? So that one would be probably the most, or would be the most substantial, both costly as well as labor intensive for the installation of a boardwalk. Otherwise,
Eric, can I just pause you
Yeah.
there? So you're saying that, and I'm going from your improvements information here, you're saying that that boardwalk would be more than the $68,375 that is, you have,
absolutely,
it would be? Okay.
substantially.
Yeah.
Substantially, give me a, like 10%, 40?
I mean, if you're looking at those two options that were previously looked at for those ADA kayak piers, one was 65, one was 68, they would be built out of the same material as that, and those also do not include piling installation. The cost for piling installation could be drastic. I'm not quite sure on what that would cost, but I would say upwards of $150,000 to $160,000. I can see it maybe even being close to $200,000 for the installation of a boardwalk.
Okay, thank you.
Very rough estimate. That estimate is still in progress for a contractor. Once that is provided, I'll send it to you guys. But without a doubt, that would be the highest involvement, both permitting-wise, design-wise, and cost-wise, would be the boardwalk.
Thank you.
Launch trailer parking, we haven't discussed yet. I would say that this would most likely be in the purview of Public Works Board for this actual area. But of course, you guys can make a recommendation as Parks Board for this area. There are two different options after talking with the fire department, Chief Jason Russ, regarding what he would like to see in that area if something is pursued for the paving of it. I do want to take the comments and considerations of the fire department into any developments in that area as well. But other than that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions I can for them. If I could rank them on a list of easiest done to most difficult, I would say the kayak rentals would be the easiest. We would go through a lease agreement with a contractor similar to what we do with Sandy Beach. That is an annual lease agreement for rentals. The next would be the short or long-term kayak storage. We currently already have a lease or rental structure for the storage racks at Sandy Beach. The only thing that I don't know is the prioritization of spots. Who gets them? Would it be a first come, first served basis? I'm not quite sure, but we already have an existing lease for them. The next would probably be, I would almost say the paving and then the installation of the kayak piers, potentially paving. It wouldn't, like I said, necessitate Public Works Board. And there could be some permitting involved in that. The kayak pier, the only reason why it may be a little bit more difficult is just because we can't currently do it right now. That would have to go through a capital funding process, which would put us into the 2026 season. That would be exempt from additional permitting. If a kayak pier is to be installed at the mill pond, one of the existing boat launch piers would come out because there's two, and it would be installed on that existing interface, and it would not necessitate permitting for that. And then educational signage, I was a part of, like I said, I know I commented before, the Ascalon State Park educational signage installation. There's a substantial amount of design involved in that. Do we want to make this site specific? Do we want to make it historically significant for the actual site? So there would have to be a designer, there would have to be a printer, and I think there's a decent amount of work that would go into developing educational signage. But other than that, I know we had a couple people speak last time at the last Parks Board meeting advocating for kayak storage. I definitely think that's something easily doable for the 2025 season.
Thank you. Eric, the question I have regarding the two that are potentially able for us to approve, the short-term, long-term kayak storage and the kayak rentals, this is much to put in. Is there a cost to take out if we say that didn't work very well? Or to maintain? Do we have estimates
For
on those?
kayak storage, no, not really. That's why I suggested when I looked at kayak racks, I did not purchase the ones for Sandy Beach. They were existing. But for around $1,500, you can get one that seems fairly maintenance-free, very heavy-duty installation. Basically plop it on the mill pond area in an area that's out of the way of traffic, something that's not going to get in the way when people are pulling kayaks. But for $1,500, you can get a reasonable one. If it doesn't work at that location, I can guarantee you that it would be used at Sandy Beach for additional storage. So if it's not working at the mill pond, if there's not that much interest, I do know that there is the want. People have reached out regarding kayak space at Sandy Beach, so it could be utilized at other parks.
Is there a space where I was trying to visualize with
It's
the
tight.
kayak storage and the rentals, what is the plan? Like, where would it be and how would it fit and look?
It's tight, and you would have to prioritize parking versus recreation opportunities currently. For one, where you put this, it has to be on level ground, and it can't impede vehicle traffic. So that puts Veterans Lane out of the way. You can't put it in the boat launch because therefore you limit boat launch traffic. You can't put it on the south end of the mill pond because there's actually a very big lip there, and you wouldn't be able to get a kayak in from that point, and it's not level. The most viable option would be behind the regulation sign at the mill pond. It is a tight area, but I think it would be the easiest spot to put it. The further you expand into that area, the more parking you take up, though, would be the downside. So if you have kayak rentals and you put them near where the regulatory signage is, you inherently may take up a parking spot. So it kind of depends on, do you want to prioritize recreational access or parking? I also think that things could be rearranged down there slightly too to promote better access to these things. Do the signs have to be in that location? So potentially if we move the signs to the south side of the mill pond where you can't actually access, you can't get a kayak there, maybe the signs are better off there and you have more usable space then for kayak storage or rentals. And all of these are fairly low impact, low maintenance, low labor associated with it.
So Eric, with that idea of potentially moving signs for access, who makes that decision?
I think it would be within my discretion to do it.
Thank you.
I mean, if it sounds like as a board, that would be something you would be interested in doing, I absolutely can do it. Maybe we put a kayak storage rack down there and it works great. That could be an option as well if we want to have more space for it. I don't think moving the signs in springtime when we have the available time to do it would be that labor intensive.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question on the parking? How many designated spots has a DNR given us for boat trailer parking at that launch? And then how does that influence any of these options or our interest in making sure we have parking available and accessible, et cetera? So I need to learn a bit more about the parking scenario.
I would too, and one of the clarifying points that I'd have to figure out, is it measured specifically from that launch or city-owned property entirely? I do believe that it was city-owned property entirely, what delineated the parking stalls for them. So I'm not quite sure. I do know that we wouldn't be able to increase the amount of parking, so whatever area down there by the fire department, we would not be able to expand additional stalls. What we currently have there, we totaled out, there would be an available of 10 cars. If you used normal parking stall requirements, 10 vehicles could park there. If it was determined to all be parking locations. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult, as I consulted with Chief Jason Russ. He absolutely would not be able to pave past the apparatus bay at that location, which is an 85-foot section.
Continuing along that line, I'm not so clear. Have we had complaints or concerns about there not being enough parking spots? Because I've gone down there several times when I was in RLIA and done surveys on 4th of July and that, maybe 2 cars. And if we're talking about putting in kayak launches, no trailers. So
I
I'm
think
not
the
sure
thought
we need.
generally in the past was when we had this discussion like at the board level, if you increase the amount of recreational opportunities, therefore you would increase the amount of people who would be visiting the mill pond, I believe was the thought behind it.
I get that, but I guess I don't see the need for a lot of trailer parking because that bridge pretty much limits what kind of boats can go through there. And walking by there, biking by there, I just don't see it.
And you could also do the same thing at Sandy Beach too, to where you delineate trailer parking versus car parking. It can be done by the way you design the parking stalls and the way you sign it and enforce it.
Because Sandy, they launch, I get that, but this is really kind of, you can't get through there unless you have a small boat.
Yeah, so it could be based on design and the way that you designate the stalls. You'd be able to do that.
And then I think that was interesting, Mary brought up, there, doesn't the DNR specify how many spots for the whole lake?
You're correct,
I
yep.
think we're already above
We are
that.
at capacity, yes. Well, in fact, yeah, for city-owned property, we are at capacity for available parking stalls.
That-
How many the Mill Pond specifically has, that I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's why I was asking how many,
Oh,
if we
if
were
it's
to, if you were to
separate.
formally mark the park, the trailer parking at the Mill Pond, I was curious, how many are there that are earmarked or designated or could be for trailers? Because I have a hard time, when I would go down there, my eyes don't see structure, so I really don't know what we have, what could be done there and what is,
Yeah, or
what
if it
would be
needs to
marked
be done.
trailer, and then how many cars you could get, let's just say 2 trailers, and then you could fit 8 cars, or is it 2 trailers and you could get 6 cars? I wasn't sure based on these measurements, what kind of the parking, what this really looked like.
Yeah, and seeing how this lies out prioritization-wise, like what recreation opportunities do you want to prioritize first? I know you're presuming that more people will visit the Mill Pond, therefore necessitating more reliable parking opportunities. However, we don't know that until we actually implement recreational opportunities. I do know that there would be permitting requirements for additional paving in that area as well, and then we have potential implications with fire department vehicles exiting the fire department. So I think it's an assumed need, but we don't quite know that yet.
So what I am hearing is we more than likely want to table points, fishing piers, boardwalk, launch trailer parking, and the, for sure, just, keep them on here for future discussion, but not really move forward as to approving or ranking them. We do want to have continued work on the educational, historical, environmental signage, and you'll give a report to that on the next board meeting, maybe, if you know it, or in January. But we could maybe give our approval to the short-term, long-term kayak storage and the kayak rental going forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
I agree to, I think, I'm very interested in that fishing piers motorless watercraft launch. I understand the limitations that would not be soon, but I mean, the sooner we come to a decision on that, if we decide to do it, then the more time
Yep.
you have to work into the budget.
That was going to be one of my comments. Mike is correct. So as we roll into 2025, I do want to start planning my 2026 capital purchases as soon as possible. My deadline is in June. If I know that the Parks Board is interested in me pursuing this and completing a capital request for it, I would like to know as soon as possible. So if there's not any opposition to the installation of a kayak or fishing pier, I just want to make sure that I don't take it off the table for capital requests for 2026.
Anita?
I wanted to ask, because I thought that a couple months ago, Aaron from the DNR was talking about potential grants for environmental signage. Is that right from my notes? Is that what she said?
I'd have to talk with Aaron. I know there's a lot of opportunities out there for it. When I was with the DNR, we did install some of these education, it was kind of the same layout as the story walk signs. They're angled sign brackets that have informational signage. We installed them at all sorts of boat launches so people knew certain shoreline management practices. It was just very generalized educational signage. If we're talking about site-specific signage, that definitely complicates this project or adds more facets to it. If it's something you just want to have generalized Wisconsin DNR standardized signage, it would be very easily done. But I can talk to Aaron and see if there is grant availability for it. I do know that I'm sure some local organizations would be interested. Maybe Aslan Historical Society would be interested in providing some information. I just know that I would need a liaison or assistance with this project. I need a designee to be able to design these. It's outside of my capacity to do that, but I'm not really sure what the motives behind Parks Board are for signage. Like I said, locations, quantities, content, that kind of stuff are currently undecided.
Well, I think that last time when Karen Hale was here, she was talking about the uniqueness of like the bullfrogs and stuff. So while it would be more involved and it might not be able to be done in 2025, I do think that we want to showcase some of the unique things that we have through environmental signage.
Yep. And I think that was the whole intent, to maybe develop something that is site-specific. Maybe you have a mix of historical and environmental signage. But I would say it would kind of be up to your guys' discretion what direction you'd kind of like to take that project. I can see this being maybe a few seasons in, what direction you'd like to take with it. So it's really up to your discretion.
Okay.
What I would like to pursue is, one, I don't want us to have billboards down there.
Not the flashing?
And well, you can almost have too much information down there. So I wondered if we could explore having headers and maybe a bullet point or two, and then that QR code to say if you want to know more about the flora, if you want to know more about the history, and then there could be a QR code that could be updated at a time, but could give the history of the mill pond or give the history of the such, and it'd be quite small. And I just think that's something we should pursue versus more signage per se down there.
I would tend to agree with Tim, looking at the costs, and like I said, depending on where you put these, they could be fairly spaced out. Do we want to necessarily put something unnatural around the natural shoreline of the mill pond? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I would say let's try to keep it like a minimal impact, but still maximum information if people want to pursue it. And I would say most people have access to some smartphone or understand the QR technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Yep, I do agree with you. I like that aspect, but like I said, we would still need to come up with a program. What information are they receiving? What links does it take them to? We would kind of have to decide what direction we'd like to go with it.
And did I mishear, Eric, are you asking the board to come up with a liaison for this, or are you, who are you looking to help you with?
What are your priorities, for educational signage? Do you want to know more history about, Joseph Key's gristmill? Do you want to know more information about the unique species that are within the mill pond? Kind of what's the direction that you'd like to take this? I would say this is something that would take time. Like I said, it would be something that when time allows, this project can be worked on, because if we are ranking these in priority, ideally tonight, that selects what projects I'm working on first.
So if I can tell you my vision, but so back when I mentioned the boardwalk, if you recall, I threw that out as a wild, if we had all the money in the world, which we don't have, it would be a cool way to get from the Bartles Beach to downtown across the mill pond. I was picturing this beautiful, mill pond with all of its, interesting aspects. And I have been on boardwalks up in the Door County area. I've been on them in other parts of the East Coast where you're walking on a path and there's a wood rail or a rail, and there's a little tiny inset sign that said, there are 50 species of frogs in this mill pond, and the bullfrog is, whatever the facts are about the bullfrog. And then that would be this little sign here. So as you stop and you're enjoying this beautiful scenery, you have this little plaque or this little sign that says something about the bullfrogs. And then you walk another 20 feet and then you find another little sign that says, do you know that we have over 60 types of whatever in your flowers or lily pad or whatever the things are. And then there's another little plaque. And so when I was originally thinking of this boardwalk, which is, I understand is very expensive, and knowing some of the other investments that I'm sure Sandy Beach is going to be requiring, I'm not sure where the funding of this would fit in the course of the next few years. But I don't think it should be something we stop thinking about. I had these signs along this walk all the way from point A, which was Bartles Beach, over to by the fire station, kind of cruising all the way through, that it would be a direct path. And then, could you have a little swing out to fish? Like maybe not. And that's DNR. Erin got really excited because she said, hey, educational, she did suggest that there would be a lot of enthusiasm for figuring out how to make something like this happen. Again, financially, is it something in our best interest? over the course of the next few years, I think we'd have to think about that, but I'm not sure, I was visualizing signage, I was trying to think where else would you put signage that's educational in the park, unless we had.
Could be along
Like,
Ferry Drive
I don't
as
see an
well.
improvement of the little fishing pier over by Bartles Beach as an option, or anything over on the channel where all of the trees, I don't know if we're replanting, where we dredged between the lake and the pedestrian bridge. Like, is there any place that we could do a lesser expensive, small, additional fishing pier?
Actually, as far as the signage goes, and I'd be interested in our thoughts on that little nature trail that is barely marked as you go south on Bartles. It's on the other side of the street, and it kind of snakes through there. And the upkeep, I imagine, could be draining. But if you want to put your QRC, or right here, you might hear a bullfrog signs. That'd be pretty easy. What's the status of that, Eric? Basically, who's responsible for keeping that?
That would be within my department. That's on our work list for the winter. We specifically have to go in there when it's frozen.
Yeah.
And get as much clearing as we can done. We're not going to be removing all dead vegetation, just any dead vegetation or trees that are potentially hazardous along the trail. Our intent there is similar to Tyranina, keep available habitat opportunities.
Yeah, leave
within
as
that
much as
nature
you
area.
can. I'm thinking more of that bridge and where it gets, as you make the corner on the south end and now you start heading east, northeast, that's where it's always marshy. That big tree fell down, then they better have boots to go through there. But I don't know what you can do to make
So I
that
know
year-round.
yeah,
But that's free.
I know at last meeting we were talking about potential alternatives and recreation opportunities here, and when we were talking about the boardwalk, we pseudo have a portion of our park that already exists from point A to point B. You could take this nature trail from Bartles Beach to the fire station, get downtown. However, it's not direct access. If you're also looking to have educational aspects with signage, this would be the perfect opportunity to have it because you're immersed when you're reading something, walking along there. The next thing that we were discussing is that trail has not been maintained in the past. There have been aspects of it that have been installed, but it hasn't been maintained. Undertaking this winter being the maintenance and management of that trail first, see what the turnaround and actual use is in springtime once we've completed the maintenance and management of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. That kind of gives you a half of the circumference of the lake to go around, and then we can encourage them to walk up our historic, what is that, South Lake Street?
The lake or the mill pond?
Well, the mill pond, excuse me. Okay.
I suppose the only other clarifying thing that I would like to mention is when we have fishing piers and motorless watercraft launch listed in these options, those are one of the same. The fishing piers are encompassed within the kayak launch. So when we are ranking them, I just want to make sure that we take that into consideration.
But we haven't considered doing just a updated, little larger fishing pier over on the Bartles Beach side as an option. I think we had talked about that really early on. The little one we have now it's old and it's small over on Bartles side.
Just north of the bridge?
Yeah. Is that an option to just improve that? Well, I see a lot of people fishing off of the pedestrian bridge. Well, I drive by there all the time. So they're off the pedestrian bridge, and then there are a lot of people that are hanging around by that little launch. And is that something that is small cost, lower cost, simpler to, I'm trying to find, I really like the kayak rentals. I think that's a slam dunk, and I like the kayak storage. I think that is, to me, a low cost, gives more citizens opportunity to have their craft down there, to get on to the mill pond. I think those two are easy, low cost, get them done. I'm trying to think of are there any other small cost, but
I would say
improvements that would add more people to get access or better access?
The expanding of the existing one at Bartles Beach, I think would be fairly easy. The only thing is that has footings on the actual shoreline, and I'm not sure how involved it would be to install additional footings out into the actual surface of the mill pond. The only reason why I was thinking the kayak pier would be a little bit easier is because we already have an interface there. Basically, it would just be to exchange or a swap one for the other. However, you do have to write the potential check of $68,000 for it. And I thought it would be two means of recreation that you're introducing, both kayak access and fishing pier opportunities. And you have access to a little bit deeper water there next to the boat launch itself. And it is more clear vegetation near the boat launch on the Veterans Lane side. But just things to think of. I'm not quite sure how involved it would be to, are you saying maybe make that longer, or the one at Bartles Beach extend further into the mill pond is what you're referring to?
Or wider, so just on, like hook it around the shoreline. It's small. I didn't measure it, but it's small, but it's usually piled with people on it. Kids and, so it seems to be heavily utilized, but it's small and it just isn't the newest.
It is small, and it could be updated, it could be redecked, that would very easily be done, but as far as expanding it, I'm not quite sure how many alterations we'd have to do to the shoreline to do that. I would like to try to keep any alterations to the shoreline as minimal as possible. I suppose it's not something that I necessarily thought about, exchanging or replacing the one at the ferry drive side.
So I keep this moving forward. I wonder if it would be okay to request that you could get some information as to updating, improving the specific one that Mary is speaking at on the north, what, I guess would be the northeast part of the ferry drive.
Yep, that would be fine. I'm thinking redecking, restating, making it look nice, fantastic. That can be done very, very easily. However, if we're looking to expand, relocate, replace, is that something we're looking at, or
I would ask
need
that
some?
you get us information to that, but I don't think that's a priority. It'd be more of an information and things saying, if this, then this, if you want to do this, this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Money-wise and permitting-wise. So that's where I guess I'm going with that one. But I do think that we want to, if we're going to the challenge of trying to get people more access and use of it, one, I don't think a lot of people, can use it if it's already been used by 3 people, but we also have to be cognizant of that, of the cost. The other thing is, Eric, I don't know if the director or the city itself solicits for donations for like the Legion or somebody that would be the Rotary that would sponsor a pier or an improvement. Is that something that you do, or?
We don't solicit donations. However, if I know there's interested parties in certain organizations, like if someone in Rotary is passionate about a certain project, pickleball is one of the great ones. There's a lot of people in Rotary who are really passionate about it, and that was the passion project of 2024. For instance, I have had Rotarians reach out that they would like to do some future improvements to the ice rinks because there is an avid ice skater within Rotary Park. So we have not solicited donations, no, but that's absolutely an opportunity to do it. I know other departments within the city do things like the market roundup, so we do have the opportunity to do it. We just have not solicited donations before as the Parks Department.
I'm wondering again, and welcome, Lisa, with that though, if we as a board could maybe make some recommendations too, or we could make some sort of announcement, say this is what we're looking for, this is the cost. If there's somebody that we could go and we could present to an organization.
Sure.
That might be a way to get awareness, but also funding.
Yep. And then think of the bike rack recently as well. Someone who was very interested in biking decided to donate a feature to the park. I think the opportunities are out there if it's something that you want to start pursuing. We just haven't done it in the past, both as a department as well as a board.
Yes. And what I would also ask is that any of our stuff, when we're asking people to donate, I know some people, you donate something, but then it doesn't get maintained. And for some people, that's frustrating. They got a beautiful bench or you got a beautiful garden. So I would ask that as we're doing this, we could also include, this is the cost to maintain this item. Either people hours or money or something, so that people know what the ask is, the true ask. So I would like to do that. So let's moving forward, if I'm hearing correctly, we are, and we can maybe vote on each one, but are we saying short-term, long-term kayak storage, we are all good for that, right? So should we?
And rental.
Well,
Oh, you want one at a time? Okay.
I'm gonna do one at a time. So we can we have a motion to accept that recommendation?
I don't think you would have to make,
Thank you for coming, Chief.
I don't think you would have to make individual motions for each of them, as you move down the list, if you just speak about them collectively, and then at the very end, you can say, we approve of the recommendations as discussed.
Okay, that makes it easier. Thank you. So let's go down, and just for future information for me, and because I get confused quite easily, could we put Mill Pond Recreation Improvements and then put a date? I'm going to put 11/11/2024 for this document, all right? And then I am going to number these rather than bullet points. So 1 is the fishing piers, motorless, 2 is the boardwalk, 3 is the launch, trailer parking, 4 is the short term, 5 is the kayak rental, 6 is the education, historic, environmental signage. Is that fair enough?
Do recall that the fishing piers and the motorless watercraft are one and the same as currently bid. If you want to separate them, it would be up to your discretion.
So 5 and 1 are the same thing, is that what we're saying? What, I'm sorry, Eric, what did you just say?
4 and 1. So as they're currently bid, the fishing piers are the same as the motorless watercraft launch. It is a pier structure that both has fishing pier access as well as kayak access.
So that's 1A, and then short term is 1B. Is that
Sure.
fair enough? All right. We got that, and then we just had what else did we just kind of add as far as recreational improvements? Mike, you were talking about
think-
the path?
I'd like to, and I guess I'm a little confused. So fishing piers, motorless watercraft launch is 1.
It's a pier structure that has both kayak ramp
Right.
and fishing
Right,
access.
which you've
onto it.
included in the first paragraph.
Yep.
Correct.
Boardwalk is 2, right? The
Yeah.
trailer parking, you said, Tim, is 3.
Yes.
And 4, no, I thought kayak storage and rentals were a separate entity from the fishing pier motorcraft launch. They're not?
The kayak storage is separate.
What's that?
The kayak storage is separate.
So kayak storage is 4.
Yeah.
And then 5 is the rental, but that's also separate from the motor
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So we
Sorry,
are,
I was confused there.
yeah, okay.
And then under 6, I wanted to add, or we should consider improvements maintaining signage along the nature trail on the
So improvements is something we're pursuing already within the 2025 winter season. Now, I would say educational signage would be
Folded
roped
in.
in with that as well. You can change the scope of that very much so.
Okay.
I would say education signage in general should be one of those points. If you don't mind, may I interject? I do have to use the restroom quickly before you vote. If that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
we need to pause?
Just asking.
All right. So thank you. So from what I'm hearing is that we are still recommending all these as possibilities. So we do want them to continue pursuing the boardwalk. But right now, for immediate budget consideration, we want to say, keep on going with the fishing piers. So we want them to go with 1.
Yeah, we want him to really flesh it out and put it into the
Put it into the budget.
Okay.
So is that what I'm hearing?
That would be for 2025 for 2026 implementation.
That is
Yep.
my understanding, correct?
Well, 2026 budget it would be, right? Because 2025 is already done.
Right, he'd ask for the money in 25
For 26.
for
okay.
26, yeah,
Yes.
yep.
And then we are saying, go ahead, we approve right now the short-term, long-term kayak storage, and we approve the kayak rentals.
Yep.
And then it sounds like they are going to continue with the educational, historical, and environmental signage, including the Mill Pond Path.
Okay.
And the boardwalk, we want them to continue exploring the costs and options and design of that. But we don't know.
Longer term.
That's longer term. We don't really know, if I'm heard Eric, we don't know what that's gonna cost.
So the only thing I'm not sure about is,
3.
well, we haven't gotten to the launch trailer parking yet because you didn't bring that one up. But the signage, I heard Eric kind of suggest he really would need some, like more framing of the perspective and the thought around what that would look like, and even possibly like where, maybe a combination of what and where. And so I don't know if that's something we need to be thinking about, how to get more information so Eric would have an idea of how to fit
Yep.
that in.
I agree. Do you want to go something as minimal as like a QR code, low invasive, something that's just one signpost that's easily accessible? Or do you want to go the very intensive route to where you have, like I said, those 45-degree angled posts? Do you have actual designed graphics on them, content? It could be very involved or very non-involved, really. It depends on the scope of the project. It's just in concept, educational signage in a concept of itself. Is I think what we're currently looking at.
Wouldn't the DNR have experience on that and the Jefferson County Land and Water?
Absolutely. So they would be resources that we would use to develop the content for these.
Right.
What I'm just saying
We have to
is,
decide how big, okay.
yeah, what I'm just saying or requesting here is educational signage in its entirety, as its scope, as a concept. Is it something that you would like to pursue? So that's kind of where I'm getting at.
So the concept, I think, yes.
Yes.
Because there's education and there is, that awareness. As far as what it looks like, I mean, I've been to Botanic Gardens. I've been to, paths down in, I can't remember the name of the parks along the Michigan, Lake Michigan Lake Shore that have nice minimal signage with QR codes that you can click on there, but there's enough information on there. Plus on their website, you can go on and get more details. So I think something that's small,
Yeah.
but I think either Anita made the comment that here's where bullfrogs are known to exist or something like that. Just to get a heads up sort of a thing so they can listen to it. But I do think we need to maybe come up with more options, ideas as to what that signage looks like. But I think we're all in agreement, we want to make it minimal impact as far as sight lines. and
So
stuff.
determining the scope and the actual implementation, I think, is something that can be continuously discussed at Parks Board. Maybe you guys can further define what educational signage would be at future meetings.
Yes. So we've talked about 1, we've talked about 2, we've talked about 4, we've talked about 5, we've talked about 6. So going back to 3, which is the launch trailer parking. And the cost of this is, if I'm reading this correctly, if we go the full length of existing gravel area, which is all along the east side of the mill pond, marsh grass area, down to the sort of like, lack of a better term, the turnaround spot down by the gate, is that what we're speaking of?
That's correct, yeah. So there's an area now, it's approximately 170 feet. We would not be able to pave the entire way to the gate. This would just be kind of that bumped out parking area on the east side of the mill pond is 170 feet in total. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult because when speaking with Chief Russ, he does not or would not like additional parking or promoted parking beyond the apparatus bay, specifically because that area is used for both emptying their trucks if they have to within that permeable area. So it's gravel, they have to have a permeable area to do that. Reliable and consistent exit of their emergency vehicles out of the apparatus bay. And that's also where they perform training where they do burn materials, and they don't do that on asphalt. They would need it in a gravel area. So based on the fire department recommendations, I would say that the extent of available parking, paving area or designated parking would be the extent of that 85 feet. 85 feet, to put it in perspective, I can provide a map as well, or future map, at the next meeting, is where the signs currently exist at the mill pond to where the curb starts on the fire department property is 85 feet. The apparatus bay is their large bay doors that open. The paving would not extend to where those doors are on the fire building.
And those apparatus bays face west.
Correct. Yep.
And so from the the launch signage right now where you pay your money to the curb is the 85 feet.
Correct.
What about on the other side of that, so more south of?
So heading towards the gate specifically is what you're referencing?
Yes.
That I didn't research. So the area that I was specifically looking at is kind of, you can see it's a bumped out area towards the marsh is what I was looking at for designated area. Beyond that, near the gate, have not researched as an alternative or a location for parking. So that I would not have information for. I mean, it could be an option. I absolutely would like to consult the fire department for anything that happens in that area. I think it's very important if they're conducting their training there. I don't want to take away training space or availability for them either if it's a used area. And then I also know that I would have to compile further information, but that's where a lot of the snow is dumped from the actual plowing operations within the city as well. I believe we have to have that stored on a permeable surface, but I'm not quite sure. I would have to do research to that. So there are some limiting factors or complications within specifically the trailer parking area.
So thank you for that. I right now would say that it sounds like both money-wise and such, pavement is not necessary. Maybe good gravel and good grade, but not pavement.
And that's my thoughts as well. I do know being that close proximity to the actual marsh, I think there are additional permitting requirements for it as well, having an impervious surface that close to a marsh. So it would not be as simple as just an asphalt overlay. There would be other factors that complicate it. One being fire department use in area. The next being we would have to include public works board into this. 3 being capital request purchase for this amount. It would be outside of the scope of my operational budget. So there's more information that we'd have to figure out. Or how big do you want to go? And Mary's question as well, how many parking stalls can you delineate in that area? We're not quite sure.
Well, and that, to me, then maybe we don't delineate them. And what we do is if they say we can park down by the gate, we just say no trailers parking. So to Mike's comment, the times that I've had my boat launched there, you kind of backed it into the weeds, at a 45, and that's the way it went. But it was a small boat in a, small impact.
Which is all it can tolerate.
Yes, and because I think if you go 2 or 3, even regular-sized boats, small that can use the mill pond, I'm guessing you can no more than 4. If you said it's 85 feet from there to there, that's 4 trailers.
I think that's probably adequate. I think we'd be predicting the increased traffic, if there's going to be any, is most likely going to be if and when we get that fishing pier motorless watercraft. That's what's going to draw people,
Yes.
I should think.
I agree with Mike. My reasoning and thought right now is that, sure, we can increase the parking there. However, we don't know what our needs are for increased parking until we yet figure out what the increased traffic is going to be. We don't know that yet because we haven't installed the additional recreation opportunities. So I think doing further action and developments to the mill pond is almost a prerequisite before you pursue improved parking access, in my thought.
No, and I think, thank you for that input, Eric. I think we agree with that. Let's see that it's something to be considered, but it has to be based on fact and use and such. If you could, though, find out from whomever about the gate area and what they use that for, I'm guessing that if it is something they place snow there, that's fine, because most people aren't going to use that mill pond until May or June anyway, and most of that snow hopefully will be gone.
So my thoughts are, I suppose, some clarifying questions as well, too. I don't want to dismay any of these recreational opportunities. I think they're all great, and they can all be performed in some capacity and at some point in time where they lie in fiscal years, maybe a few questions here and there. However, I would like to pursue or will be pursuing the kayak storage as well as the kayak rentals. How that initially begins is for kayak rentals, is we have an annual lease agreement with an existing vendor at Sandy Beach, and that gets approved at the council level. Parks Board heard it, I believe in 2023 was the first time that we had kayak rentals available at Sandy Beach. So each year I go through an annual approval process at the council level. I would work with the contractor, see what the viable location would be for a kayak storage location at the mill pond. See if any lease structures change because it's a different location. I'm not quite sure, but I think they can be easily implemented. And the way that I would do it is when the Sandy Beach rental agreement comes to city council for its annual approval, I would also include a secondary location at the mill pond as well and have one approval for one singular vendor. The next thing for the actual kayak storage, I don't necessarily want to play devil's advocate here, but I think one of the difficulties that we may have is having more interest in kayak storage at that location than we have the capacity to meet. We may very well have 50 people that are really interested in storing their kayak at the mill pond, but we only have 8 available storage spots. Are they served on a first come, first served basis? Are some of my questions. And I would implement the exact same lease structure as we have at Sandy Beach. We have an existing document. We have it implemented. We collect the fees. We issue a number for these, and it's up to the actual individual person to lock their watercraft on it. I would implement it exactly across the board for the sake of consistency. The location does not change the way we implement it, basically, and enforce it. I think that's pretty easily done. So basically, the first thing of the year, I have $1,500 in my new operational budget. Come January, I can purchase a kayak spot or kayak rack. If we have to do some moving of the signs there in spring, that'll be pretty easily done. But I think it would be easily implemented to do kayak storage down there with the same lease structure. The lease structure currently, I can share it with you as well if you would like, but it is April 1st through October 1st. It's basically a seasonal long-term agreement.
Can we look at the first rack of 8? Can we frame it as a pilot?
Sure.
To the citizens and just say we're going to look to see, like, want their feedback on
Sure.
how they felt the launch scenario went. So maybe they all can't get parking, or maybe the launch situation, because there isn't that pier yet, our motorless watercraft launch isn't there yet, that they're going to give if the 8 people who sign up would be open to working on considering it a pilot and giving us feedback about all the things they liked or didn't like about
Absolutely.
their experience. It may be something that gives us more of an indication about how many racks. So let's say this is going to be the best thing if we put the watercraft launch in there someday. 8 spots may be too few because we're giving everybody the
That is
access, but
true.
now you can't put your
That is-
kayak down there. So I want to, I think I'm thinking of the big plan. We got to watch what we ask for, or watch what we provide. And so would there be more spots to have more racks? Could you do 6 racks of 8? I don't know the space enough. I'm trying to visualize it all
Sure.
to know, is it expandable to complement this launch if the demand was there for our residents?
If the demand was there, yes. If we get to the point to where it's exceedingly so, we also have to take into consideration how much is too much for that spot as well.
Yep.
There is such thing as potentially too much congestion and too much stuff going on down there too. So it is kind of a balance. I do agree in the first thing, it'd be pretty easy to implement 8 people. Maybe we only have 3 users who are really interested in that. I'm not quite sure. But I think it would be very easy to implement that.
I know there was a waiting list for the one at Sandy Beach, I understand.
That is correct.
So
Yep.
there probably, I'm guessing there's interest, and some people who were on Sandy, at least a few that I know are renting, live closer to the one
Yep.
at the Mill Pond, and that might be their preference, so.
So this is how I would implement this, is have the exact same lease, but have them site-specific. So we have our Mill Pond lease, we have our Sandy Beach leases. What I would first do is offer those 8 storage or user locations to the next 8 people on the Sandy Beach wait list is kind of how I would do it, and go down the list in preference from that. I think that would be the fairest alternative to do it, rather than first come, first served to the general public. We already have some users who are interested in storing their kayak. I would like to offer them a second location if they've been on the wait list for a long time. I think would be the best way to pursue it.
I like that.
And I agree, Eric. I would ask that with the contract now, I don't know if there is a clause in there that these are all subject to being increased based on inflation or demand. Because right now, we've revisit that the increase in prices, and I think if people know that there may be a 5%, and who knows what's going to be in the future here.
We have the ability to raise the lease fees on an annual basis.
Right, so they make sure they know that. And then the other thing is, at least I'm just talking about my experience when I've used kayaks, a lot of these, you want to use them from one place to the other. So they're on your vehicle. So, I think the more thing is that people are going to park, they aren't going to use that storage rack, but they are going to use the launch, either where the boat is now or a future one. So I think the amount of parking might not be as big of an issue as we might fear.
I think hearing the public comment and some of the comments that I've received as well, people would be much more likely to kayak if they did not have to transport their watercraft,
Yeah.
is generally what it is. Or at least the convenience of having, if you don't own lakefront property, having the convenience of having your watercraft close to the water helps.
And I think what then Mary brings up the comment that I think we should do this as a pilot and move it forward. If there isn't, then we'll just figure it out later.
Yep, so that's the reason why these are annual leases, not long-term leases. In the event that this lease ever needs to be terminated or changed, or we need to change a clause within it, we have the ability to do that.
Okay, thank you. I am looking at our agenda item, which is to prepare the city council update or recommendations on the next steps for fulfilling. And I think this discussion is leading to that. And so what I'm looking to do is, if I just to review, number one, yes, we want you to continue with that and to put it into the budget to be implemented in 2026. All agreed? Yes. All right.
Yes.
The boardwalk, continue giving us options and ideas. You have here the price quote is in progress. So if we can get a map and, the material and such, that is, when you can. Number three, the launch trailer parking. I think, I'm hearing we're tabling that for now, based on just some more information regarding the snow and the parking but we're recommending no pavement, no impervious surface. Thank you. The short-term, long-term kayak storage, we are approving it to be done with, as you've just delineated, Eric, with the different options for the people in the contract. The kayak rentals, same, we would approve that go forward with the current Surf Shack rentals. All right, and then the number 6, which is education, historic, environmental signage, still pursuing it and giving us ideas as to who, what, and where for the immediate 2025, and also then moving into if there is request for 2026.
Yep, that provides me the direction that I need. And I'll go from there. What I'll continue doing is picking at these with each, recurring Parks Board meeting. If I receive information or get more updates, I'll provide them as I get them.
All right, so thank you. Any other comments regarding the discussion and ranking? All right, so the ranking is, again, 4 or 5 go. 1 is continue, come up with the things, then the others will, more information to be forthcoming. Accurate? So let's move to the next agenda item, which is the update or the recommendation. I believe we already did it pretty much with the update would be, here's the order, here's the ranking in such order. These are what we approved directly. And then as far as the recommendations is just see what it is as pilots and revisit it in 2025 at the end of the year, because I think that's what we're looking at is after the summer. Am I clear on that or accurate, Mary?
Can you repeat that, Tim, actually,
I
the
think Eric
timing
would
wise?
have to get the fishing pier kayak launch. That one's what you're talking about. He'd have to get that in the budget for 2025. So we'd need to kind of be firm on that by the middle of the summer next year.
Yeah, and I mean, exactly.
No, it was,
No, I apologize. I think you just go with 1A, get it into the budget and get it approved for 2026. Where I was speaking as far as what we revisit would be number 6, as far as after all the stuff is
Signage.
done, we get an idea of how the storage went. We look at how the
Yeah.
rentals went, and then we look at what we got as far as the improvements when it comes to number 6.
End of summer.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
because, people don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
Till they actually use it or see it, or we have a chance to find other options.
Yep, I agree. So procedurally wise, are we anticipating an update to city council or your final recommendation on the mill pond, or maybe your year-end findings for what work has been done on the mill pond and what we're moving forward in 2025? Are we anticipating to give an update to council by the end of the year?
The answer to your question is yes. We want to give an update and a recommendation. I believe the update will be that we did our improvement talk and decisions. And as far as the recommendation is, we stay with what we proposed before: no dredging, no
Harvesting.
harvesting, thank you, and then continue on with our recommendations that we just made on this thing. It would be the update that I am foreseeing. So.
Yeah, I believe that's the next development. Like you said, you gave your recommendation, or the Parks Board gave their recommendation and voted to not pursue dredging. The next step was looking at recreational opportunities within the city council resolution for that. I believe you would have satisfied that. Maybe, I don't know if I don't want to speak for our president here, but perhaps we could reach out to Lisa and see what city council or what the president is specifically looking at within that resolution. But I would believe that you would meet it by making a recommendation on recreational improvements. And I believe you would do that as we pursue these.
And go ahead, Adita.
So would we have to formalize then kind of in what we're recommending for the recreational improvements?
I believe, yeah, I think you would actually have to make a motion to do it. Parks Board as a whole makes this recommendation, so I believe you'd have to make a motion and approve it.
Do we want to have it kind of written up next month before we vote on it, or is this good enough and just say put it into the right language?
I think that we should probably make it a little more formal. And so I think we could make it more, ranked and such, and using the bullet or the numbered things we have here, and then we could present or make that, and then we could present it like do we need to have that do you know, Eric, do we need to have that at the December meeting, or is that something that will meet our ask by having this at the January meeting?
I would think in December, timing wise, I don't believe there's going to be a second meeting. I'd have to look at what the calendar is, honestly.
So
I
we
can
would,
tell you.
at our next meeting, Tim, we would formally adopt the paper? Okay.
I think we want to come up with the language, and
Yeah.
Who should write that up? Do you want-
we'll talk about that in a
We
moment.
do have it, city council meets on both December 3rd and December 17th.
Oh, so you would be able to, yep. So where that works in your guys' schedule then, if you hold your December meeting, you would then be able to have it for the second city council meeting in December. So you would have your final recommendation by the end of the year if you plan for December 17th. Thank you, Mary.
I think that would be good then. right?
Sure.
And then I see somebody's on the calendar. When is our December meeting?
Our December meeting, 5:30, December 9th.
Right.
Yes.
So we could get that done, and then we could present it to the city council on the second meeting with pretty much I think we're clear what we're going to do at it. We want to make it more specific.
So if you don't mind, it will be tight for the December 9th meeting, but I could come up with some drafted language, send it to you, Tim, see how it works, and I could have kind of the draft for it, and you could work off of it from there to start your recommendation. So if I provide you kind of the template for it, if you'd be able to work on it, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I think that's,
Of our recommendation?
yes.
Okay.
All right, does everyone agree with that? All right.
Yes.
Now, you parliamentarians, do we need to have a motion and a second to our discussion and what we just agreed to here?
I would say yes, and the way that I would pursue it is that you approve of moving forward with you approve of the recommended recreational improvements to the mill pond as discussed. So that would mean you're looking at 2026 as potential improvements. I would say that Parks Board generally would approve of the recreational improvements as discussed.
Okay. So who would like to make said motion?
I would make the motion that Eric would draft a preliminary formal statement reflecting our discussions of the 6 options that would constitute our final recommendation to the city council for improving.
Yep, that
recreational
way,
mill pond.
what we could do then is that could be a specific agenda item at the next one. You could approve it immediately at the next meeting and then finalize your recommendation. I think that would be adequate.
And I will second that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a vote? Adina?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So let's move to the next agenda item, which is the announcements. Any announcements, number 9?
I will be gone next week, starting Wednesday afternoon, and I will be returning on December 2nd or 3rd, whatever the Monday following Thanksgiving will be. If anyone does need to reach me, by all means, office staff is able to contact me, but I will be out of reliable email access for that time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
What are those dates, Eric, from next Tuesday?
Those dates are going to be next Wednesday.
Monday, the 18th.
That will be Wednesday, the 20th, and I will be returning on December 2nd, Monday.
Thank you. Recommendations, number 10, recommendations for future agendas?
As we talked about, it would be the confirming of the recreational improvements motion, and then it would also be finalizing your recommendation to City Council. And then I would like to hear or have for discussion decision the 2025 proposed athletic field use policy. We've been working on that. The current policy had its holes and issues. I believe that we've taken in a lot of feedback from both recreational department teams itself, school district teams, and private league teams. Tried to come up with something that is as fair and enforceable as possible. I think we've done a good job putting together a draft. However, I would prefer we have Parks Board involvement and approval of that policy. This is time sensitive though, because we would like to enact this policy prior to field bookings on January 1.
Okay. And do we need anything, and Mary, maybe you can speak to this, as far as giving the vote on the Sandy Beach restaurant? Do we need to have any discussion regarding the Parks Board as to what next steps are, or what our ideas are, or any of that? Or is that beyond ours?
I don't even think we're at the point. We got to see what City Council determination is based on that advisory referendum, where we're at in future involvement to the park and future renovations in the park hasn't been decided yet. So the only thing that was on the table was the restaurant itself. I would say let's wait for an update to see what City Council decides on after that advisory referendum.
Well, that's where I'm getting at. Would that be something Mary would have after your first meeting in December, that you could present to us at our meeting in?
We're not sure.
Happy to provide an overview of the city council's outcomes, whatever we decide. I also, I just lost my train of thought regarding the city council's. The city council, when we had our strategic planning check-in meeting several weeks ago, also had a discussion regarding Sandy Beach as a full program to take a look at that again. And so I'm expecting that the Parks Board may have some connectivity to some outcomes. We haven't gotten our game plan together on what that next set of steps looks like for us to kind of recheck in on the big Sandy Beach plan. You know, the restaurant was the first priority out of the gate, but I will be the conduit between anything that we discuss that lands on our lap to make sure that it's framed right for us.
Yeah, and I just think that'd be something to have on the agenda, not that for detail, that you probably don't know, but at least an idea. Here's what we talked about, here's where we are, here's some ideas. And I think that would meet the needs for keeping it going. All right, so,
I do have a question. Would it be too soon for us to get an update on the ad hoc committee on the urban forestry?
Yep, I can provide a
One?
brief one here right now for you. I don't know the results of, that's actually where I was prior to this meeting. I don't know the final results of that meeting. However, the Forestry Committee has been discussing what the Parks Board involvement or their proposed Parks Board involvement would be. As of this evening's meeting, they had discussed Parks Board being involved in the being the advisory board for selection of a heritage tree or designating of heritage trees within the community. The next one being what level of involvement the Parks Board may have for the future development of our new master street tree plan that would be developing in years coming. So like I said, they will be making their final recommendation or findings to City Council. I'm not quite sure at what meeting, but at some point in December, the Forestry Committee will be providing their final recommendation to City Council. At that point, we'll kind of know what level of involvement Parks Board will have.
and so, I'm sorry. Thank
you.
And so, Eric, am I hearing that you'll be able to present that to us in our December 9th meeting, at least an overview of that?
Yes, I do believe that the next ad hoc forestry committee, if they are having a meeting in December, will also be December 9th. So I'll be coming immediately from that meeting. So tonight was kind of interesting. I could provide you an update for what I attended at tonight's meeting. However, their meeting did extend into the start of Parks Board, so I don't know the complete discussions that were had at their meeting. But I can provide some level of update at the next meeting, yes.
That's fine. Thank you. Mary?
Also, at the next meeting, could we have an update on the seawall design for Bartles Beach that you?
If I have one.
If you have one?
Yep.
I think that would be of interest.
So I can provide you some update there for that. It's going through the engineering and design process currently. The biggest thing they're going to do is surveying what currently exists is at the point that we're right now. I believe in the off season, so this winter season, they will continue to develop their design. We're not at that point yet, though. So I think a lot of stuff goes into designing a seawall, much more so than I know. So if I have an update, I will provide it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry, but I do think we should put that on the agenda, just so we just get a quick, even if it's only a very short, to be continued, but I do think we should put that on the agenda, so thank you for bringing that up. If no other recommendations for future agendas, I would propose that at 7:14, we adjourn said meeting. Right. Thank you. Where's my